Hey everyone, welcome to the Week 5 recap of the Danker Family Fantasy Football League. I'm your host, Paul Jensen, and yes, I've been gone for the last few days. I've had a pretty bad sore throat, starting, what was it, like early Tuesday, and luckily I feel a lot better now, so that's good. So now I can finally do my recap, and then tomorrow I'm gonna do the Week 6 prediction video. But yeah, I just wanted to apologize for the delay in case anyone was wondering. But I did send out a text too, so I'm sure most of you saw it. But let's go ahead and dive right into what happened for Week 5. As you can see, just a quick look at the standings. Tom continuing to be in first place, undefeated at 5-0. He's just insane. We got three and two teams with Ben, Adrian, and Joan, and then the rest, except for me, are 2 and 3, and me in sole possession of last place, 1 and 4. What a humbling year this has been for your two-time defending champ. Not gonna lie, it's been tough. But yeah, and then just also some quick looks at things for some extra stats here in terms of points for. It makes sense that the top four teams, Tom, Ben, Joan, and Adrian, are all have the most points. I mean, that just makes sense, right? Um, I'm I'm in the middle, even though I'm 1 and 4, but then you got like, everyone else kind of tied down here near the bottom. And then points against also making sense a little bit. Adrian and Tom have had the least points against, with myself and Dad and Nels in third and fourth basically for points against. Yet we both have losing records, so we both kind of had tough luck matchups. We haven't been hitting the good fortune there yet. So, and then Garrett having the most points against, which kind of surprising. 'Cause, I mean, I know he's 2 and 3, but um, it just seems like most of his games have been kind of close, if not. But and then also just looking at some streaks. Obviously, Tom's got the 5 game win streak, but he got three teams with 3 in a row, or 2 in a row, I should say, with Adrian, Joan, and Ben. Obviously, they've been trending up since they're near the top right now. And then trending down, other than myself, we have Nels with 2 straight losses. Garrett has his second straight loss, and Carey has lost 3 straight after starting 2-0. So definitely good times ahead, hopefully for us. And another final thing I just wanted to point out, interesting correlation, and I guess it makes total sense, right? The teams that have the most amount of transaction moves are the teams near the bottom, because obviously we're all the desperate ones who are looking for any way possible to get better. So we try to make as many moves as possible, and those at the top, like Tom and Joan and Ben and Adrian, aren't making as many moves, and well, because they didn't need to, because their teams are just drafted well. So I think that's just an interesting thing to point out. But moving on to the matchups. Actually, before I move on to the matchups, going to the scoreboard real quick for Week 5. Um, Obviously, going through our weekly awards, most points goes to Ben, scoring 178.18 points. The fewest points goes to yours truly for only getting 81.22. I almost edged out my dad. He got 81.64, but he just had to get that 0.42 more. So yeah, whatever. Um, Best win is gonna go to Carol, which she's been struggling lately, but not last week. Last week she did pretty well, so she's gonna get the best win. She had the highest margin of victory at 60.84 points of victory over Garrett. Toughest loss. Even though it's not the closest loss, I'm gonna give it to Carrie. She had the fourth most points of anyone this week with 139, so she did well above average, or she did above, I wouldn't say well above, she did above the average of our family league for the week, but she ended up losing because she had a tough luck matchup against Ben, who's had the best team last week. So yeah, Carrie's got the toughest loss, and then the luckiest win. I mean, it's really kind of a default at this point because like they're all pretty decisive victories, but just by default, by point margin, Joan, Mom, you got the luckiest win, even though it's not really that lucky. You kind of won pretty convincingly, but just because it was the smallest margin of victory, I'm going to give that one to you. All right, so now moving on to the matchups individually. First, we got myself versus Tom. Tom wiped the floor with me. He did what I predicted, and I said Tom would get the win, and he did. He kept his dominance up. Um, just taking a look at some of the key players, for Tom, very obvious, Josh Jacobs getting basically 20 points, David Montgomery also getting 20 points, Tyreek Hill with 32, um, and even Kyron Williams getting, oh wow, I totally wrote that down wrong in my notes. He only got 7.7, not 17.7. So scratch that. So it's just the three, Jacobs, Montgomery, and Tyreek. I mean, you could also include Mahomes, but he underperformed his projection, so I'm not really going to include that. But those are kind of Tom's key performers. For me, it was just one player, Puka Nacua, and that's it. Everyone else was just horrible. And even my stars like Devontae Adams and Derrick Henry and Tua, I thought Tua would have a bounce back game against the Giants, and I mean he did well, but he just he threw a couple picks. I think he even fumbled it too, so that didn't really help out. And everyone else, yeah, just when you only have two guys at double digits, it doesn't really help. So only one good performance by Puka, and then that was it. And then for Tom, obviously he did enough to get the job done. So not really much to say here. I mean, Tom's team is just better than mine. I'm not gonna lie. Moving forward, I mean, I don't have any consistent running backs. Even looking at my bench, now my bench did do pretty well. I definitely should have started the 49ers instead of Houston. I just figured they're playing Dallas. I thought Dallas would put up much more of a fight than they did. So Dallas seems pretty weak right now. Not gonna lie, they seem a lot like fakers. Kyle Pitts, the one week I sit him, he finally has a great week. Of course, that's how it works out. Um, yeah. And then for Tom, not, I mean, he didn't really have to do anything different. His lineup did pretty well. He could have played Christian Watson, obviously, over Devontae Smith, but who would have seen that coming? He could have played Jalen Warren over Kyron Williams, but who would have seen that coming? So, yeah, but for me, my running backs are too inconsistent. Uh, need to figure out something there real soon, or else I'm gonna continue to keep losing. I do get Keenan Allen back next week, so I am looking forward to that. So I don't have to play Terry McLaurin anymore unless I need him for some reason. If anyone out there is desperate for a wide receiver, Terry McLaurin is on the trade market. So just letting you know. Um, and then for Tom, he's just got the perfect team for everything. When it comes to buys, if Kenneth Walker's on a buy, it's all good because he's got Jacobs, Montgomery, and Kyron to potentially replace him. If he's got injuries, he's got great depth at wide receiver. He's got three pretty solid receiving options on his bench, and even with running backs too. With two solid running backs, and you could even say three if Kareem Hunt, but he hasn't really gone off yet. And then even off weeks, right? I mean, like Devontae Smith had an off week. TJ Hawkinson kind of had an off week. Kyron Williams, Bills defense, Mahomes. I mean, whenever those guys have down weeks, when you have a deep lineup, it doesn't matter because as long as a few of them, go off, then everything's gonna look fine. So Tom's just got the perfect team right now, and I don't really see him losing a matchup anytime soon unless he goes up against like a really tough opponent. So, which who knows? Like if he goes up against Ben or Adrian, or I don't know, but we'll see. Moving on to the next matchup, Garrett versus Carroll. I also predicted this one correct. I said Carroll would win easy, and she did. Um, just looking at some of the key performers for Garrett, Joe Burrow finally going off 23.38 points. Uh, kind of like a breakout game for Joe if he was due. That's for sure. George Kittle also had an amazing game. I think he had three touchdowns against Dallas. So great performance by him. Other than that, though, very lackluster for Garrett's lineup. And he also dealt with some injuries too, like Justin Jefferson got hurt and Aaron Jones everyone thought he'd play, but he just never came around and never to playing, and that was very frustrating for Packers fans, but also for Aaron Jones fantasy owners. And then for Carroll, obviously Jalen Hurts did his thing. Jamar Chase, 52 points. Good God. Jamar Chase just, going along with Burrow and the Bengals offense finally played to their played to the ability that they are used to playing. So Jamar Chase had three touchdowns for catching too, so like just an amazing game for him. Sam Laporta, is he going to be the next best tight end in fantasy for years to come? I mean, it looks like it so far. He's been playing really well as a really good pickup by Carroll this season. So, um, Yeah, one that I definitely thought about making, I just never did. So yeah, kudos to Carroll for getting quick on that. Um, Obviously for Garrett, the majority of his team just underperformed, and when you add up the injuries too, like the two Broncos receivers didn't do anything. Dameon Pierce, he's been kind of lackluster this year. But yeah, Justin Jefferson's injury didn't really help, and same thing with Aaron Jones not playing. So, and he did have two receivers on buys, DK and Mike Evans, so he should get those guys back. But it is interesting. So. But yeah, both of his QBs have been struggling, but now last week they both did pretty well. So even though Goff technically did better, Joe Burrow still had great games. So that's one good thing to note for Garrett moving forward. For Carroll, obviously, you know, she was carried by her three monster performances, from Chase, Hurts, and Laporta. Mixon, Pacheco pretty much, barely went under, Tank Dell, whatever, Nico Collins, whatever. It's fine when you have a guy that gives you 50 and two other guys that give you basically 20, 20 plus. Um, yeah, it's gonna be fine as long as your opponent's isn't matching what you're putting up, and Carroll did that. So, I mean, she could play the Steelers defense over the Ravens, but who would have saw that coming? No one would have seen that coming. Zay Flowers had a pretty decent game. That's one of those things too. Why play two receivers on the same team? I mean, I guess if you're, if you don't want to pick the wrong one, so you try to get pick for both, but they're both, you know, wrong in this instance. But hey, that's hard to predict sometimes. But yeah, moving forward, Garrett's running back situation does look bleak though with injuries, and I don't know how when Jones will ever get back. I know he did play against the Lions in week 4, but very limited. It's just I don't know. So got a really bad feeling there, and Jones not going to be playing much moving forward. I hope I'm wrong, but yeah, it's just who knows with him. Um, and then yeah, obviously Justin Jefferson's injury, he's on the IR now, so that stinks for Garrett. Being number one pick, he was doing pretty well. He's easily your most consistent player up until last week when he got hurt. So now you're gonna have to hope Mike Evans or DK Metcalf can kind of step up, and one of the Broncos receivers could step. I know they already played yesterday, Denver, so I'll have to look at that in the prediction video because I haven't looked at the scoreboard yet for week 6. So we'll see how that goes for Garrett. And then for Carroll, like I said, next best tight end, Sam Laporta, in the future, is he going to be the Travis Kelce of fantasy football? Is he going to be the guy that everyone covets and tries to get early in the drafts for years to come? I mean, I have a strong feeling that might be the case because Sam Laporta has been playing out of his mind the last few weeks, and he was a second, if I think it was an early second round pick, if I'm not mistaken, but he's definitely been showing why he's such a highly touted prospect at tight end in fantasy football. And then Carroll's wide receiver group is a little shaky. She does have a lot, but it's just other than Jamar Chase, it's kind of hard to tell, you know, when one of the Texans receivers will go off, or when Zay Flowers will have a good game, or even Romeo Dobbs. That was like a really rare bad game for Romeo Dobbs. So it's like you just never know with the receivers that Carroll has. Moving on to the next game, Adrian versus Nels. I got this one wrong. I thought Nels would win this game. Adrian proved me wrong. Sam Howell had a great second half against the Bears. First half was awful, but the second half, wow, he turned it. Even though they still lost, he really helped Adrian out there. DeAndre Swift had another great game. He's proving me more and more wrong every week. I thought he'd be more of like a roller coaster type player where he has ups and downs, but he's been very consistent. So good pickup there. Stephon Diggs again having a great game like he always does. DeAndre Hopkins finally going out and getting a 20 plus point game. Is this a one time thing for him, or is he figured something out with Ryan Tannehill? I don't know. Um, I would still think not so, but that's just me. But yeah, good performance by D Hop. For Nels' dad, it was just one player, Travis Kelce. That's it. I mean, you could also say your kicker too. Evan McPherson was good with 12 points, and your kicker was your second highest score, which is never a good sign. So, yeah, that's definitely a decent way to lose a game right there. But yeah, just looking at it, almost everyone got single digits. I think Dad's bench. So Nelson's bench got 79 points. His starters got 81 points. So his bench almost was they were nearly matched what Nelson's starters were. So, you know, Adam Thielen getting 27 points on your bench, that's got to sting. Picking the Commanders defense, who ended up getting -5 against the Bears over like the Saints or even the Dolphins, who both got 10 plus, or Saints got 20 plus, but still, yeah, just bad week for, leaving certain guys on your bench and everything like that. Would it have made a difference? I think it might have, maybe, if you would have played everything right. Like if you would have played Pittman over Olave and Saints defense over Commanders and Thielen over Robinson, you would have had to literally play every single thing perfectly, which is hard to do. But yeah, I mean, even the off days from normal good players like Debo and Olave and James Conner getting injured, like that didn't help either. So yeah, I mean, and Lamar Jackson just struggling against Pittsburgh. Lamar Jackson's a hard fantasy player to figure out. He really is. He's been very inconsistent. He's either goes off for 20 plus points or he has single digits. So yeah, Lamar is kind of a wild card there, to say the least. And then obviously, for Adrian having pretty much consistent play, with the exception of a few, like Ramondre Stevenson and CeeDee Lamb had down weeks, but everyone else pretty much did their job. So as long as you get the majority of your team hitting or over hitting their projection, then that's a good recipe for a victory. Moving forward, Adrian's running back depth is still a little bit bad. DeAndre Swift's great, but other than that, Stevenson, he hasn't really looked that well, especially lately. Um, and then obviously like Gibson, Charbonnet, Elliott, like Edwards, they're all backups at this point. So it's not really looking too good from the running back side for Adrian, but he did win. And yeah, for else, the James Conner injury hurts the running back depth a little bit. I mean, I still like Brian Robinson, just his matchups are a little tough to gauge. Tony Pollard should still be a solid running back one. Javonte Williams coming off injury, we'll see how he does. Again, I know the game was last night, but I'm just saying for fantasy purposes, we'll see how he does against the Chiefs. Yeah, so it's like the Dad's running back group isn't really that exciting either. And Adam Thielen, he's definitely starting to earn a starting spot, in my opinion. If you look at Adam Thielen's little history here, he's got 4 straight weeks of 15 plus points. Three of them are 20 plus, and two of them are 27 plus. So, yeah, Adam Thielen's been playing out of his mind. So you should definitely put him in your starting lineup, Nels, Dad, however you want me to call you. Yeah, so that's that matchup. Moving forward, Joan versus John. This is another one I got wrong. I said John would win in a close one. It wasn't really that close, and it was Joan who ended up winning. Mom who ended up winning. For Mom, it was Josh Allen, Raheem Mostert, George Pickens had a nice game. Christian Kirk did well. The Jets defense, it was just a lot of really good performances. Only two players in single digits for Mom. That kind of bodes well, like I said in different matchups prior. For John, he had Alvin Kamara do pretty well. Cooper Kupp came back off injury. He did well. Achane did well until he got injured. But um, yeah, for John, I mean, yeah, he only had three players in single digits, but even then, like the guys who weren't in single digits, the majority of them were under 15. Looks like, yeah, Jalen Watt only 14 and a half, Bijan Robinson only 11, CJ Stroud only 14. It's just like the backups, CJ Stroud's usually his backup QB with Herbert on a bye week, but he didn't really perform to the level that everyone thought he would. Bijan Robinson struggled too. Yeah, just the majority underperformed, and quarterback situation just didn't work out in your favor this week, John. So yeah, and obviously Dalton Kincaid is just not a starting tight end in fantasy, so John's really got to figure out his tight end situation. Um, Joan, on the other hand, majority overperformed, just kind of like Adrian. Uh, and she only had two players below 10 points. So, yeah, everyone else, when you have a lot of players getting 14 plus points, that's a good sign. So, pretty solid performance. Looking at the bench, nothing really different. John, I mean, obviously Gabe Davis going off for 22. That's got a sting. He's not really a guy you would have expected to get that many, and even Zach Moss with Jonathan Taylor coming back from injury. It's just tough to gauge which one of those two is going to be the starter moving forward. And Saquon Barkley was injured and uh, you know, didn't didn't get to play, so that didn't help you as well. But even then, like your running back group is pretty solid. Now Achan is out for a while now because he's on injured reserve, so we'll see how that affects that. And on for mom's side, I think Austin Eckler is going to be playing against Dallas on Monday night this weekend, so that should help mom moving forward. And then your tight end situation's kind of iffy. Darren Waller, I know he did better than Jake Ferguson. It's just going to be one of those matchup things, whoever's got the better matchup, in my opinion. Jake Ferguson played a tough defense in San Francisco, so it makes sense that why Waller did better. So it's just be mindful of the tight end situation that you go with mom. Um, and then yeah, for John also moving forward, Jordan Addison, he's a guy to look at. Since Justin Jefferson's now out for at least 4 weeks, Jordan Addison might be a wide receiver or flex play, especially with a guy like Waddle struggling, and Achane going on the IR. So Jordan Addison is definitely someone to look at in terms of putting in as a starter moving forward. And then going on the last matchup, Carey versus Ben. This one I got correct. I said Ben would win, and he did. Her carries, she had Breece Hall going off for 28 points. Clearly the best game he's had this year. Um, Also, Josh Reynolds getting 17 when he was only projected at 9. Obviously, that's great. And then, of course, DJ Moore, who went off on Thursday night against Washington. Um, yeah, what an amazing job that was. Unfortunately, though, it wasn't enough because Ben had a little bit more help from just a few more players. Justin Fields, second straight week for Justin Fields of going off. Travis Etienne got 30 plus as well. AJ Brown literally almost hit his projection. Calvin Ridley, 20 points. Kobe Myers, 20 points. Even the Packers defense got you 11, which is pretty shocking. So, yeah, and surprisingly enough, you're you're the only player on Ben's lineup who underperformed the projection was Christian McCaffrey, who's been easily the best fantasy player, at least up until week 4. Up until the start of week 5, Christian McCaffrey was getting 30 points a game, seemed like. But yeah, I mean, Christian McCaffrey was your worst performing player, at least in terms of what they're projected to hit. So how about that? Fantasy football can be wild. So Ben won in spite of Christian McCaffrey, which is crazy to say. But yeah, obviously, when Ben has two players at 30 plus and another two players at 20 plus, that definitely helps. And then Carey, she had a good performance from a few players, but overall, though, Hunter Henry didn't help her out. Patriots defense was not a good play. Obviously, kicker doesn't really get much for you. James Cook didn't do that well either. So it's just, a few, players here and there. If they would have just done better, maybe, and you didn't really, nothing you could have done really either, just because, you only had two other players on your bench who scored, and that was it. Amon-Ra getting hurt, could that have helped out if he actually played? I doubt it, but same thing with T. Higgins and all that. But yeah, so it was just a tough luck matchup for Carey this past week. Moving forward, I think DJ Moore is starting to get a lot like he's early on the season. DJ was struggling, but he's definitely proven to be a clear-cut starter in fantasy for Carey. So DJ Moore is a good guy to hold on to as far as starting lineup worth. Running backs are still kind of iffy after the starters. Your depth is a little off, and now Chuba Hubbard should be interesting because Miles Sanders is out this weekend, so that might be an interesting person to look at potentially starting. But we'll do that in predictions, so I'm not gonna go too far into that. Tight ends, yeah, I might need to rethink. Hunter Henry was great the first 2 weeks of the season. Now he's just disappeared, so you might need to think about finding a new tight end moving forward. And Kirk Cousins, is he going to start, trending down now that Justin Jefferson's hurt? So I don't know. We'll see how that goes for Carey. And then for Ben, Justin Fields, is he finally starting to figure things out, or is it just two easy opponents in Denver and Washington that he faced? And will he come back down to earth against Minnesota, or will Justin Fields continue to play extremely well? Something tells me Ben thinks he'll play well against Minnesota's defense, but I don't know. We'll see next week, or this weekend. And then their overall depth, Ben's starting lineup is great. His depth is a little concerning. But overall, I do like his team. I think it's probably the second best team in the league. So, um, yeah, and then he's also getting two solid receivers coming back off of buys next week in Cooper and Godwin. So, yeah, that those are my thoughts on the recap for this past weekend, and then going one last look at the final standing projections. Uncle Tom's still at one, no shock there. Ben going all the way up to two. Um, Adrian's now in third in the power rankings with Joan at fourth, and then uh, going up to fifth is John, and then at six, what did I say? Oh, Nels fell from two to six, and then Carol's going down to seven, Garrett at eight, Carrie at nine, and then myself at 10. Yikes. So not looking good for me. The biggest trending up, obviously, this is again, just so no one's confused, this is from draft day. So like the beginning play, the clear circles are where you started. And if it's gray like this, it means you're at where you started. So Carrie started at nine, she's still at nine. Tom started at one, he is at one. But since draft day, Ben's trended up mightily. He's up at 8 spots. Adrian and John are now up three, and then trending down, Garrett down 5 positions from draft day. Obviously, the Justin Jefferson injury didn't help out. So, but yeah, that's the show. I'm going to quickly put this out there so then I can prep and do the week 6 predictions video tomorrow and get that out tomorrow right before games start on Sunday. So thank you so much for your patience this week. I appreciate it. Thank you for watching, for listening. I'm Paul Jensen. This has been the DFFFP signing off. Have a good weekend, everyone.